Hello everyone, thanks for tuning in today's video. Going to have a look at the weather next week's 10 days. For today's video, this will take us to around the 28th of January. So we're going into the final stages of the second month of the winter of 2017-18 with today's update. So we had the stormy weather last night, and it brought snow, it brought heavy rain, and gusts of wind up to 70, 80 miles an hour, some parts of the country. It wasn't a named storm either, so this is producing quite a lot of questioning of the whole naming of storms system. I've never been a fan of that myself anyway, but quite why it didn't meet the criteria to be named, given the kind of scale of winds that we saw last night, is quite surprising. And I think really all I can say is that you've got to pose your questions to the UK Met Office and the Irish Met Offices, because they are the ones that came up with the storm naming system. But certainly it is notable that this particular bout of wind probably affected more areas more severely than many of the named storms that we've had in the past few years. It was really quite a nasty wind event that occurred last night, and well, it's a can of worms, so just depends what you think about the storm naming system, I suppose. But in any case, it's out of the way now. It's gone. It's off into Europe, and it's producing very nasty weather through many parts of Central Europe at the moment. We are now calming down, so the weather is improving, and actually over the next couple of days, we're going to see we're reverting back to that sort of colder northwesterly that we had earlier on in the week, bringing in wintry showers to northern and western parts of the country. We'll have a look at weather from the start of next week for today's video. We're going to begin, though, by having a look at what's going on in the stratosphere. So these are the temperatures at 30 HPA in the North Pole, over the stratosphere from the JMA, Japanese Meteorological Agency website. The grey line here is the trend for this time of the year, starting in September, and of course running through into the summer months over there. And the black line is where we've actually been with the temperatures in the stratosphere at 30 HPA this season. So we're starting around here in September, close to average, stay close to average through October and start of November, but then through much of November, actually, we went colder than average. Then through early December, we went warmer than average, after which, into January, had a real plunge in those temperatures in the stratosphere, went very, very cold indeed. But temperatures are now picking up, so where we are right now is just a little bit under average underneath this grey line. But actually the temperatures are beginning to recover now in the stratosphere at 30 HPA. Not a sudden stratospheric warming mode. To get a sudden stratospheric warming, we would take this black line and we'd move it up to there within 2 or 3 days. So it certainly is a sudden stratospheric warming. It's just a recovery back closer to average for the temperature at 30 HPA. Let's have a look at 10 HPA, and it's a very similar sort of story. So again, we had a very cold temperature at 10 HPA around a week or so ago. Now we're seeing the temperature starting to recover. It's starting to return back closer to this grey line. So the temperatures are beginning to lift up in the stratosphere at 10 and 30 HPA. But it still is quite cold, up there, a little bit colder than average. GFS forecast for the temperature in the stratosphere at 10 HPA looking like this. So the blue colours that we have here are those cold temperatures over North Pole in the stratosphere. We're looking to infiltrate yellows, oranges and reds into the stratosphere. If we do that, then we are having a sudden stratospheric warming just running through the next few weeks. So we do get this warming occurring over Europe. You remember around a week or so ago, GFS was indicating this warming to be occurring across Europe, which it then wanted to intensify into a genuine sudden stratospheric warming and push it northwards into the North Pole as a very intense warming of the stratosphere. So the first part of this is still going to occur around the 22nd, 23rd of January. We are going to get this warming of the stratosphere over Europe, quite a minor and modest warming. The difference, though, now is that the GFS is not generating this into a major southern stratospheric warming event. So we go into the extended range of the GFS model, and you see that, well, we do intensify that warming a little bit over Siberia on the 29th. It's almost getting towards a moderate sort of stratospheric warming level, but certainly falling well short of a sudden stratospheric warming. And actually, as we go into the early part of February, that just kind of fizzles out, and we just keep these blue colours in place in the stratosphere over North Pole. So no sign this side of January, the end of January, no sign of a sudden stratospheric warming at this stage. Have a look at 500 millibar height anomaly flowcharts for the next week to 10 days. We've got the ECMWF here on the top, the GFS. Have a look at that in a moment. On the bottom, 500 millibars, 8,000 feet is an area in the atmosphere. High pressure, low pressure are being moved around by a jet stream running above. Now, you'll notice that this chart for the ECMWF is blank, so we can't glean any information from that. We had this a couple of weeks ago at the Penn State University website where they didn't update the ECM part of these 500 millibar height anomaly flowcharts, and it looks like that's continuing again now, so we're not sure what's going on at the Penn State University website, but we can't get any information from the ECM. But we have got the GFS to look at, so this is the 500 millibar height anomaly flowchart for the next 7 to 10 days from the GFS model. We've got blue colours extrapolating to below average heights, which is low pressure, and then red colours extrapolating to above average heights, which is going to be high pressure. Now, this is shown for a 7 to 10 day sort of time frame, which is kind of like the very end of January. I've got a bit of a battle going on here. So I've got a lot of red sitting to our east, plenty of above average heights to the east. We've got these deep blue colours to the west. So this is really let battle commence. See, GFS actually has the low pressure in the Atlantic as the main driver, so we are in generally a mild west southwesterly flow, but it probably wouldn't take much of an adjustment to start to bring the air in from at least the southeast, maybe even the east, with this area of above average heights. One change that is happening is over in America. It looks like we've got a ridge building here across eastern parts of the states. That should bring much milder conditions into many parts of Central and Eastern America. As that ridge builds, it will start to push the air up from the south. So that's a change. If you think that the cold weather they've been getting in America has been meaning that in Western Europe and much of Europe, we haven't been able to get cold conditions. Well, that's a change, because it looks like much milder weather should be coming up to America in the final sort of week to 10 days, or so, the final days, I should say, of January. But for us, well, it's the low pressure in the Atlantic versus the high pressure to the east. The GFS at the moment has this trough in the Atlantic as the main driver, but we'll have to see how that works out as we get through to the end of January. Temperature ensembles from the GFS model are looking like this. The red line here is the 30-year upper air temperature average. We're going to be cold on average now through to the weekend, so you're going to have 2 or 3 more days of quite cold weather. After that, though, from the end of weekend into next week, turning quite mild. It looks like it has several days of mild west-southwesterly winds next week, and then beyond that, I think the general thrust of the ensemble is to keep things on the milder side, but there is a lot of scatter in there for these final days of January into the beginning of November. So we have got quite a few cold ensemble members. We also have quite a few mild ensemble members. The ensemble mean, which is the white line, that is above average. So I think generally the GFS ensembles are mild through to the end of January, possibly even to the start of February, but there is quite a lot of scatter within that. Temperature anomalies for the next week are turning milder, so this is taking us from the 18th, I should say, Thursday the 18th, through to Friday the 26th of January. It's coming out mild on average, particularly for England and Wales. It looks like it's going to be quite a mild week, I think, actually, next week. Precipitation anomalies from the 18th, 26th of January, they are coming out average to wetter than average. This is how the GFS is looking for Monday then, bringing in these milder southwesterly winds, and those winds will stay with us through the week next week, keeping winds generally from a west-southwesterly direction. We have got low pressure out to the northwest, so that will bring rain at times, particularly to northern and western parts of the country, but for the south and southeast, a lot of reasonably dry and mild weather through the early part of next week before it probably turns wetter and a little bit cooler as well into the second half of next week. But overall, the winds remain from the west to the southwest, even running up towards day 10, which takes us to Sunday, the 28th of January. It's looking generally mild with wind off the Atlantic, sort of cooler sectors and warmer sectors alternating, but overall quite a mild week coming up next week, and at times wet and windy. This looks, for example, on day 10 like a proper sort of wet and windy spell of weather. Finally, just have a look at the east end of the Earth. That's very similar. So the Atlantic is breaking through on Monday, bringing milder conditions off the Atlantic. These milder conditions continue through the early part of next week as well. Bit of a long fetch southwesterly there, so it could be very mild actually, a temperature to 13 or 14 degrees through the early part of next week, before the temperatures probably level back closer to average as the wind turns more westerly through the second half of next week. But overall, again, very similar to the GFS. It takes us up to day 10, which again, it's all, the weather is all coming in from off the Atlantic, so it looks generally mild, at least to day 10. Sunday 28th of January, wet and windy at times. But no sign of anything particularly cold coming up within the next 10 days anyway. Once we get beyond sort of Saturday, be cold at Saturday, then after that, I think next week especially is looking quite mild. Where we go into February, I think it remains to be seen. We are building the heights to our east and our northeast, so I suspect we will get a bit of a battle in the end between high pressure to the northeast, low pressure in the Atlantic. Of course, no guarantee that will get us into cold easterly winds, so we'll just have to wait and see. But definitely next week looking quite mild. Actually, you might even say a little taste of spring in the air next week at times. How long that lasts, I think, is open to question. Right, that's all for now. JMA Friday tomorrow, so come back for that. But that's all for now, and thanks for watching.